Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of College Football Tuesday. I'm your host, Larry Frank, and we will be joined momentarily by Zach Mckinnell of the Blue Bloods, who should be joining us in just a couple moments. But what a terrific, what a great, what an amazing show we have for you this evening. Most of you are going to actually get to see this on the replay, while some of you, if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, you may get to see it live. But either way, no matter where you're listening or how you're listening, welcome to another great show tonight. And like I said, we are moments away from having Zach Mckinnell joining us from Blue Bloods, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about in the world of college football. We have the latest, or should I say the first, college football playoff polls out, and boy, is there controversy surrounding these polls, as there always is. Political bull crap, like always, when you get to these college football polls. And when Zach joins us, we'll get into it a little bit more in depth. But we also got some news of a coach stepping down in NCAA football. And then we're going to be joined in about 30 minutes by former NFL running back and former All-American running back out of Notre Dame, Reggie Brooks, is going to be joining us about halfway through the show. So what an amazing, amazing, amazing show we have for you this evening. We're going to get right into it, and then Zach will be joining us momentarily while I bring up my notes here. Want to make sure that I got everything that I need, so when he gets on, we'll be ready to rock and roll here. His internet went down, so he should be getting it back up momentarily, and he'll be on the show. But I'm going to start out, and I'm going to, I'll go ahead for the sake of time tonight. We'll talk about this college football playoff rankings, which, if you ask me, I think they're a load of bull crap. And I can't think of any nicer or more professional way to say it than it's a load of bull crap. When you look at what the college football playoff panel did today, you'll see why I'm so frustrated, why I'm so disturbed, why I'm so angry, why I'm so pissed off, because it's not fair. How you leave a team like Cincinnati, who beat Notre Dame, who beat Indiana, how you can leave them out of the top four is just a load of bull. The reason why they're not in it is because they don't play in a power conference, and it's completely unfair, completely upsetting. And for those people in the Cincinnati area, love to get a comment or two in the comment section, but I agree with you. It's just completely ridiculous. Now, when you look at the order and you look at this college football poll, Georgia is first. I don't think there's any argument, any complaints, any disagreement on who should be number one. Georgia Bulldogs have played a great, great season, the entire season, have beaten people convincingly. Bennett has taken over at quarterback and has done an incredible job over there. When you look at number two, I look at Alabama, and I believe Alabama lost to Texas A&M, if I'm correct, and they barely got by Florida, who is not a great team this year, but yet because the panel loves to kiss the rear end of Nick Saban, they continue to put them in the top two is ridiculous. If you want to maybe put Alabama at number 4, maybe I would somehow agree, to some point here, but it just doesn't make sense. Then you got Oregon. Listen to this, folks. How the hell Oregon can be over Cincinnati? I'm sorry. You got Michigan State, which I agree with, at number 3, who is undefeated. But how you can have the Oregon Ducks at number 4 at 7-1. Okay, they beat UCLA by 3 points. They lost to Stanford. They beat California by 7, and they beat Fresno by 7. So they're playing teams that are not even ranked and are not even convincingly winning those games. Yet the poll, the college football poll, has them at number 4. Completely ludicrous, ridiculous, discouraging, disgusting how they could have them at the number 4 position. Then you look at Ohio State. Ohio lost to Oregon, and basically they have beaten up on no one the entire season. They haven't played anybody decent except for Penn State. They do not. We got a listener here, and I love to say it, and let's go ahead and put this up. It says, I disagree. Cincy does not deserve to be in the top 4. Weak conference, strength of schedule. Indiana is down this year, and they've been struggling against lesser competition in their own conference. Completely disagree, and we agreed to disagree on this show, Crazy Criminal. But at the end of the day, you are wrong, and I'll tell you why you are wrong. I back myself with fact. Cincinnati beat Notre Dame. Okay? Cincinnati beat Notre Dame. Can anybody out there tell me Notre Dame is not a good team? They're ranked 10th on the coaches poll. Can you tell me Notre Dame's not a good team? Okay? They beat Indiana, yes, but so did was it Ohio State? How can you look at me and say when Oregon, UCLA unranked, Stanford unranked, California unranked, Fresno State unranked, then how the hell do you put a team like Oregon in the top 4 when they are playing a weak schedule? If it works for one, it's got to work for all. The only reason that they're not in this top 4 is because they are not a power conference, and this committee does not want to see a school from outside one of the power conferences being in it. Totally disagree with you, Crazy Criminal, but thank you so much. Meanwhile, I said, okay, so you do agree with our, okay, all right, I like that now. All right, now you're thinking, my friend. Yes, you do. Huge win against us, but lost. That's right. But let's also look at, Ohio State. They lost to Oregon, who you don't think should be in the top 4. They also have not played anyone. Look at the teams that Ohio State has played this year, and it's a weaker schedule than Cincinnati has played. Now, take into account, Crazy Criminal, that towards the end of the year, it's going to get a little tougher because you have Ohio State finishing up the last 2 games of the season. I believe they finish up 1 game versus Michigan and one versus Michigan State. So they will have a possibility to either earn that ranking or, should I say, lose that ranking come the end of the year. So for Ohio State, it should play out by the end of the season. But I mean, completely disagree. And, it's kind of like Wake Forest. The problem with Wake Forest right now, who is ranked actually number 9th in this poll, is that the ACC is so bad this year. It is so bad this year that it's going to be hard for Wake Forest to jump up into a top 4 because of the teams. Clemson's not good anymore. They're not ranked. Florida State's not good anymore. They're not ranked. North Carolina is not having the year everyone expected. NC State is not playing well this year, although Wake Forest this week plays North Carolina, and then they play NC State the following week. So we got a lot of good football left. There's about 4 games left, I believe. Some teams may even have 5. But, this is all going to play out by the end of the year. So we should see. But if you're asking me, the first poll that has come out, it's too political, guys. And if anybody out there tells me it's not political, they're lying. I will look you right in the eye and tell you you're lying. At the end of the day, there's too much political bullcrap that goes into these playoff polls, and they need to take. And I agree with our buddy Crazy Criminal. You have to look at strength of schedule, but if you're looking at strength of schedule, you have to look at it for every team. And if someone's going to look at me and say Cincinnati, who has beaten Notre Dame this year, okay, I believe that's Notre Dame's only loss, and you're going to tell me they shouldn't be in it because of strength of schedule, you definitely have to go back and take Oregon and Ohio State, who both have a loss, out of that top 4 right now. That's just my opinion. You know what they say about opinions. So we'll see how that plays out. But ladies and gentlemen, we are minutes away from having Zach Mckinnell from the Blue Bloods joining us to run down the previous week's games and the upcoming games. We're going to have Reggie Brooks. I'll tell you what, guys, this guy was amazing in 1992. He was 5th in the Heisman Trophy. I mean, this is a guy that scored a touchdown while he was unconscious. That's right. You heard me right. He scored a touchdown while he was unconscious versus Michigan. And he's going to tell us all about it when he comes on this evening in about 20 minutes from now. So hopefully, we'll get that started. He got the link. He should be on in plenty of time. We also have some breaking news. If you haven't heard that Gary Peter, one thing that we were talking about politics in college football, and when you look at college football, one of the things that longevity and loyalty is gone for coaches of all different sports. It is gone in college football. The days of seeing someone like a Mike Krzyzewski in basketball, or the Bobby Bowdens in football, or the Joe Paternos in football are long over. And that was proven the other day when Gary Patterson of the TCU Horned Frogs, actually he resigned, but let's just say he was forced to resign. Here's a head coach, spent 20 years with the program, turned this program around, took it from nothing and made it something. I mean, here's a guy who's coached 18 first-team All-Americans, 55 NFL draft picks, had an undefeated season, won a Rose Bowl, and just put this Horned Frogs football program into the top 10 quite frequently during his 20-year tenure at TCU, and now he is gone. He was pretty much forced out, and this is a team, now let me be fair, okay, in 22 seasons, Patterson has 181 victories, but over the past 4 seasons, he was 21-22, 3-5 this year, so he's been struggling a little bit. But when you look at what this guy's done and the way they are getting rid of him, it just blows my mind how much, I don't know what the right word is. It's just discouraging to know that people that have done so much for your program for the last 20 years, it's very easy for you to say, go ahead, get the hell out of here. We don't want you anymore. We're moving in different directions because alumni give you money and all you care about is the money that you're getting from the boosters and the alumni. Terrible, terrible. I'm not going to sit here and justify whether he should have been or shouldn't have been. But when you look at what he's done for this program, the seasons he had, I think he was the second longest tenured head coach in college football behind Iowa's Kirk Ferentz. So nobody else has coached longer except for Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. And just a sad, sad thing to see Gary Patterson leaving TCU. I mean, he's been there since the year 2000, and now he will be gone. So we apologize, folks, for those of you that, joined us late. We went over the college football poll. We just went over, the firing or resigning of Gary Patterson. We're momentarily going to start going over some of these scores from the weekend, and I'm trying to hold out a little bit for Zach Mckinnell, but if not, we'll go ahead. We'll get started without Zach, but it's always better when Zach's around. I can tell you that much. But if you didn't see it, here is the top 6 college football playoff poll. If the season should end today, it would be Georgia playing Michigan State, and then Alabama playing Oregon, I guess, is the way this format would play out. But Georgia's number 1, Alabama's number 2, Michigan State number 3, Oregon 4, Ohio State 5, and Cincinnati 6. So that's the way it's all playing out right now. Let me see if Zach is on his way here. Okay. Let's go ahead and ask him. If now, we'll just go ahead, folks, and all right. So then I just got ready. All right. We are about 15 minutes away, folks, from having Reggie Brooks, the former All-American running back from Notre Dame. But let's go ahead, and we're going to go ahead. Well, Zach will join us momentarily while we're going over some of these scores. But let's go ahead. I mean, obviously, the Wisconsin-Iowa game, this is a game that did not surprise me. We talked about Iowa, Zach and I, when we were on the show last Tuesday, and this was a game where basically Iowa did nothing offensively. Wisconsin had 166 yards rushing. Braylon Allen had 104 yards. Iowa only had 156 yards. Wisconsin ran away with this game. And, Iowa is not a team. Iowa wins by playing defense. But it was Wisconsin that came to play in this game, played a great defense, ended up winning this game 27-7. And, that'll definitely push Iowa. I think Iowa, once again, I have all the rankings for you, but all right. So we are about a couple seconds away from having Zach joining us. But Wisconsin way over Iowa, 27. The number 9 team, Iowa, loses. So although Wisconsin unranked, they went ahead and lost over the weekend. We're going to go ahead, I'm being told, and take a quick 15-station break. And then when we come back, we're going to recap the big games from last week. Let's go ahead and take a 15-second station break. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Sports. I'm Larry Frank, and joining us now is Zach Mckinnell of the Blue Bloods. Zach, we started off the show. As you know, the college football poll came out, went over them with that. I talked about my discouragement in some. I don't like it. I will say I don't like it. I think it's too much political bullcrap, as always, and I'm tired of it. Because when you look at a team, and we had a fan that was great debate a little bit while you were gone, and of course I proved I was right. You knew that would come up. But when you look at it, you gotta, I don't know, maybe I'm different, but when I look at these schedules, I understand with Georgia being number 1. No argument there, okay? I may even agree that Alabama's in the top 4, but not second. But when you look at this, and let me go ahead and pull it up for you, Zach, as I'm sure that you've seen it by now. There we go. There we go. Pull that down. There we go. And then when you look at this and you see Michigan State, I'll even agree with Michigan State. Undefeated, just came off a huge win coming back from Michigan. But when you look at number 4, 5, and 6, they completely screwed the whole thing up. And let me explain why. And I'd love to get your opinion on it. First of all, you got Oregon at number 4. When you look at Oregon, okay, Oregon is 7-1, okay? They lost to Stanford, an unranked team. They barely beat UCLA, who's currently unranked. They beat California by 7, and they beat Fresno State by 7. They haven't really destroyed anyone. So when you look at the strength of schedule there, you can't say they played the toughest schedule in the NCAA. And then it even gets me upset because even a worse strength of schedule has to be the Ohio State Buckeyes, who have been very quiet this year among where they are. But Ohio State lost to Oregon. Now, in all fairness to Ohio State, they will be tested the last 2 games of the season when they play Michigan and Michigan State. But you cannot argue that Cincinnati does not have a tough enough schedule, who they beat in Notre Dame this year. Indiana, I think at the time they played them, was ranked. You cannot argue. The reason why Cincinnati is not in that top 4 is because they are not in a power conference, and the committee doesn't want to see a team from a non-power conference making the playoffs.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the first thing is I thought Oregon at 4 was just asinine. I can't see a single argument right now where you say Oregon's a top 4 team in the country. I mean, yes, could they be over Ohio State? I had Ohio State 6 in my rankings. If you want to put Oregon 6, that's fine, and Ohio State 7, that's fine. I love that they punished Oklahoma for not looking very impressive in their games. I mean, outside of Texas, they don't have a ranked win. They have 0 top 20 wins, and they really got punished by it. But I would make an argument that an undefeated Oklahoma right now has an argument to be over Ohio State and also in Oregon. But the biggest thing for me was Michigan State, for me, I thought had a clear shot at number 2. I mean, they have right now, with how that Clemson win is aged for Georgia, I think potentially they have the best win of the season right now against the top 10 Michigan team, coming back by 16 down. Their Heisman candidate getting 5 rushing touchdowns. They didn't play particularly well early, but they found a way to win. For me right now, I thought that win was good enough to take them there. They have a ranked win over Miami as well, which has aged very well now that Miami's pulled off 2 straight ranked wins in back-to-back weeks over Pitt and NC State. But the thing
Tyler Van Dyke, baby.
Yeah, and the thing with Cincinnati that gets me about Oregon is Cincinnati also has a top 10 win, just like Oregon has, but they've won every game outside of the Navy game by more than 1 score. Yes, they might not have looked impressive in the first half, but are we judging teams off of first half performance, or are we judging them off of a full game of, performing? And they got that Notre Dame win, looks great now that Notre Dame's really catching their win. They had a huge win over North Carolina this weekend, and they have 3 wins over teams with 500 or better records. The number one thing that I think made Alabama second, I don't know if you caught this, Larry, they put Mississippi State at 16 with 3 losses. How good does whose resume do you think that helps? Who has a 44 to 10 win over Mississippi State this year? That's Alabama. So again, it's just a case of SEC bias, and you can call it bias, you can call it truth, whatever you want to. But they had an SEC, flavor to the rankings a little bit because, I mean, right now, if I ask you, is Mississippi the top team? I don't think a lot of people would say yes to that question. So for me, I've released my rankings on my channel this morning. I had Georgia 1, Michigan State 2, Cincy 3, Bama 4, Oklahoma 5, Ohio State 6, with Oregon coming in at 7, just on the outside. So for me, I was very disappointed in the Oregon ranking. I still don't think Bama's number 2 in the country. But for me, the number one thing playing against Cincinnati, and man, I hate to say this because I've been a Cincy supporter on the show. I can see the argument for keeping Cincy out right now. If they were at 5, no problem. I don't think they're at 6. But the problem is, one, SMU lost. That was going to be their ranked win that they could hang their hat on later in the season. Well, they're not ranked anymore. Houston can't seem to get it together. They're great one week. They slip up another week. Memphis is having a down year. UCF is having a down year. Tulsa's not having a great year. So really and truly, a lot of us, including myself as a Cincy guy, was saying that AAC was supposed to have a banner year, right? We got the number 2 team. Gus Malzahn comes into UCF. Memphis is this team, and we had our bulletin board of teams that were going to be big wins. None of them were working out. Mackenzie Milton goes down for UCF. They fall off the face of the earth. They just don't have any strength of schedule. They might go through the season with their only ranked win coming against Notre Dame, and that's going to cost them. As sad as it is, Larry, it is going to be a problem just because you've got to have ranked wins. And so right now, I wouldn't mind Cincy at 5. I think Cincy right now has just as good of a resume as Oregon. I don't think Oregon's beaten a singular good team outside of Ohio State this year. And so for me, I think that's my biggest critique. But overall, let's just say this. Everybody controls their destiny other than Cincinnati right now.
Oklahoma. And you know what? One team that doesn't, even if they went out, and we'll get Reggie Brooks on right after this, is the ACC has played so bad this year. North Carolina, a lot of things expected. Clemson, didn't pan out. NC State isn't panning out. So now you have an 8-0 Wake Forest team playing back-to-back games with North Carolina and NC State, in which neither team is ranked now. So once again, when you look at this schedule, a season that looked like it was going to be tough for Wake Forest looks like it's a lot easier of a schedule than it was at the beginning of the season.
So let me ask you something, and I mean, people watching can answer too in the comments. If Wake Forest had their resume and I scratched out the name and put Clemson, where would they be ranked right now?
I'm sorry, explain that again.
So if you took the exact resume Wake Forest has this year, but instead of Wake Forest, it was Clemson, where would they be ranked?
Well, Clemson would be up there because Clemson is Clemson.
Exactly. So I think it's a little bit of unfair bias right now for Wake Forest as well. I mean, but the problem is the ACC, I've said it on my show, Florida State not being good has killed the ACC perception because that's one of those borderline blue blood programs that really props up the ACC.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech was supposed to be good. They haven't played well. Mississippi State beats an NC State. NC State loses to Miami. Pitt, who was supposed to be the next big thing, loses to Miami this weekend. The ACC teams can't stay out of their way. What Wake Forest needed to happen was North Carolina beat Notre Dame last week. If that would have happened, that could have potentially given them a big win on their resume. But right now, when you're looking at how it is, I think even if Wake Forest wins out, it's going to be extremely hard for them to be in the top 4.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is now a great honor, thrill, and pleasure to introduce to you. I mean, some of you may be young, but I'm a lot older than you. And I watched this guy play back in 1992. I remember it like it was yesterday. A former All-American Notre Dame running back. I believe in 92 even, Zach, that if I'm correct, he was 5th in the Heisman Trophy voting in 1992. Let's welcome in former NFL running back and former Notre Dame All-American Reggie Brooks. Reggie, how you doing today?
Doing good. Actually, on my way to pick up my daughter from cheer practice. So I'm a cheer dad now.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. That's a good thing. Hey, let me ask you something right off the bat because we're getting down to crunch time here in the college football regular season. For a Heisman candidate, somebody who is being considered, whether it be Kelly Pickett of Pittsburgh, Kenneth Walker of Michigan State, Bryce Young of Alabama, just to name a few. I mean, how going into the final quarter of the season, how does it affect those players knowing that there's a possibility they can be a finalist for the Heisman Trophy? And how did it affect you back in 1992?
Well, I'll say this: it shouldn't affect them from the standpoint of you're part of a team, and each of those guys you're talking about quarterbacks, so you should be familiar with that pressure, and being the quarterback at the quarterback position, that shouldn't be a foreign thing to you. So you shouldn't feel any undue pressure because again, the Heisman is at the end of the year, and to be honest with you, I didn't even think about it. I mean, I had guys like Rick Meyer and Jerome Bettis in the same backfield, and they were Heisman candidates as well. So it was never about the prize. It was always about the game and playing with your teammates and just wanting to win.
Now, you switched, I know, from defensive back in the early college years to running back. When was it in 1992? I mean, what was it about that season? I think you switched in 91. When did you realize that, hey, first of all, I got something very special here. And what was it about the 92 season that you figured out that just made you go out on that unbelievable run?
Well, a lot of it starts in the spring. I mean, I had a great spring season in the spring of 92 going into the season. Had a great workout in the summer workouts. And it was, to be honest with you, it was really the offensive line. I don't ever recall getting hit in the backfield because my offensive line was so good. And then you have a backfield mate like Jerome Bettis. There was no pressure, and all I had to go out and do was just play the game that I played all my life. So it was such a comfortable feeling because I didn't press. And I wasn't trying to make plays. I was just playing the game. And I think that's where, again, it helped me because I had so many great players around me that it made me better. I just wanted to do my part, and it allowed me to play a lot freer and not feel like everything was riding on me because it wasn't. I had a lot of guys to share the limelight with.
Reggie, when did you identify and know that Jerome Bettis was going to be something special? I mean, obviously, Hall of Fame career in the NFL. Did you know in college, in your wildest dreams, that Jerome would turn out to be as good as he was, or is it something that just happened over a period of time?
We knew Jerome was going to be something special in his freshman year when he came in. To be he was such a big guy, played fullback, but this guy had some of the best feet I've ever seen for a guy of his size. And his physicality, but the ability to move and make guys miss, and then also the ability, if you get in his way, he'll run through you. So he was special when he hit campus. To be honest with you, he was special when he came on his recruiting visit. He just fit right in because that was we played under Lou Holtz, and Coach Holtz was a big run first guy. So if you enjoyed running the football, you're going to have some opportunities. And a guy like Jerome, he enjoyed the contact and the physicality of the game. So it was just automatic that he fit our system and our program as soon as he touched campus.
Talk about playing at Notre Dame, because, I mean, obviously everybody's seen the movie Rudy and the special meaning that Notre Dame has. But if you talk to people that really played in real life like yourself at Notre Dame, they say it really is that special. It's just an amazing feeling walking out on that field, all the history, all the nostalgia, all the great coaches, obviously, that have come through there. What is it like to go out and play on that field?
It's I still get goosebumps if I walk just coming out of the tunnel. And that was one of the things that my father was big on me coming when I, was being recruited, was the importance of knowing the history of the game. And the storied history of Notre Dame was just epic. And like I said, to be honest with you, I didn't know anything about Notre Dame until my father started telling me and my brother about it. My brother went to Notre Dame a couple years before me. So we learned about Notre Dame through my dad, that because he, grew up and, would listen to Notre Dame on the radio. And, that was kind of the only game in town. And Notre Dame was really the only team that was on TV every week. So you would see these pictures, and you have the golden dome gleaming in the background. And it's something about walking that campus is because it's really small. It's a small school. Now it's up to 8,000 undergrad. So that was not, it was not as big of a place as you thought, but it had such a prestige, and Coach Holtz describes it as best as anybody. It's like he always talking about, for those that know Notre Dame, have been to Notre Dame, there's no explanation needed. And for those that haven't, there's no explanation that'll suffice. So it's hard to put into words just the magnitude of coming out of that tunnel, walking down the stairs, hitting the play like a champion sign. And it's a mentality. You have to have the right mentality to play at Notre Dame because you got to go to class. You have to do a lot of the things that, are required of you as a student. And the mental side of things are such a key part of being a part of that. And then the mystique, you hear about Rockney and the Gipper and Leahy, the Four Horsemen, all these mythical individuals, and then, I came in and, Tim Brown had just won the Heisman. I got to know Rocky Blyer, Alan Page. So it's just, you hear these names of epic guys, the Heward, the Lou Jacks, the Latners, and it just continues to build, and to have an opportunity to be a part of that was absolutely breathtaking and amazing. And I still, get goosebumps, anytime I walk on campus.
Talk about Lou Holtz. I mean, everybody, you talk about historical people, and I know you smile when that name is said, but he didn't just have an influence on his players on the field. He had a big influence with them off the field as well, didn't he?
Yeah, because, again, he would always talk to us and said, and he'd tell you, I'm not teaching you about the game. This is about life. We have a mantra that we all subscribe to as players that played under Coach Holtz: love, trust, and commitment. You ask yourself 3 questions and ask you 3 questions of your teammates. Can I trust you? Are you committed to excellence, and do you care about me? And you ask that of yourself. Do you care about others? Do the right thing. Do the best you can. And he was, and people see, they see Dr. Lou on the ESPN. That dude was a tyrant. I mean, he was vicious. And to be that small and have that big of an impact, I mean, love, trust, and commitment is a way of life. It's not just something we say. It's what we live. And I have teammates to this day that we still bond together over that mantra because of the blood, sweat, and tears that we, gave to the university. And, he brought that to us. He brought that to Notre Dame, the importance and the values of doing things the right way, showing people that you care. And, when you line up next to somebody, they need to be able to trust you. And kind of going back to what I was saying originally, it was my teammates that helped me do what I was able to do. And that was just about doing my part. And that was something Coach was very adamant about, is that you're part of a team. You're not an individual of yourself that, you don't carry a team. Each individual is a part of that team, a part of that unit. And as long as you're doing your part, we'll be okay. And, actually, he put so much pressure on us in practice that when we got to the game, a lot of times it was a break because he was so intense, so driven for the perfect practice that when we got on the field, we were so prepared, so locked in that we played at such a high level week in and week out.
Reg, before I get into your book, I'm going to go ahead and let Zach jump in here. Zach, want to make sure you get some questions in. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. And, looking at the Notre Dame program now, I know you're still highly involved with the team and the school and everything like that. What makes Brian Kelly such a special coach, man? He's going to go down as one of the greats at Notre Dame. He's been on the cusp of getting one of those national titles, been to the playoff. Have you seen any similarities to what type of program Holtz ran compared to what Coach Brian Kelly's running right now at Notre Dame?
I will say this: if I would have loved to play in the Brian Kelly system back then. I look at Kyron Williams and the success he's had, And you know, just from a running back standpoint, you know, you got Josh Adams, you know, Theo Riddick, you know, a number of guys that have played, you know, Cam McDaniels, that have had success under his system as from a running back perspective. It's good to see a more open, more pass-oriented game. Again, I'm still keyed in more toward the run, but I love the way this offense runs, how they open things up and use the talents of the guys that they have on the team. And then the development. You know, I've seen such development from an offensive line standpoint. You see those guys. That was something I'm always keyed in on. This year hasn't been as good as it's been in the past, but having those strong offensive lines that can move guys and create those seams and allow the backs to perform at a high level. It's great to see, you know, the defense. You know, I mean, you look back, we struggled, you know, early on during Kelly's time. We've had some up and down times with defensive coordinators, but over the last few guys, defense has been, you know, a stalwart in this won games. And, you know, I have to admit, you know, defense does win championships. That old saying is actually true. So I look at BK and, you know, the success he had comes from the development of the guys that he has in his system and, you know, just in his growth, you know, because people, and you still see those memes about the purple face Coach Kelly, and to see how he's grown and matured as a coach and able to deal with this new generation of athletes, because it is different. You know, there's a different expectation that these young men have that, you know, you have to adapt, and he's done a good job of adapting to this next generation of football players.
Absolutely. And my last question for the book questions, for me, there's a lot of talk about all these conferences with conference realignment trying to get Notre Dame. Y'all like the golden apple. Everyone wants Notre Dame in the conference. Is there a conference you would like to see Notre Dame join, or is it for you just a staple for you guys to be out on your own, got the NBC contract, and Notre Dame is a big enough brand to carry their own?
Well, Notre Dame has proven it is a brand within itself, and I would be hesitant to join a conference just from the simple fact that you look at the history of Notre Dame, the barnstorming with Rockne, and how it got its name. It was, Big Ten kind of, they gave us the stiff arm. So, and how Notre Dame has built this brand up on a national following. And I think, you look at, the teams that we play, and I talk about in the book, I had the pleasure of traveling around the country playing football, but I'm playing in New York. My first game ever, I play in New York in a pro stadium. If you're in a conference, you're not going to have that opportunity to do that every year. I go from coast to coast. And one year, one game I'm in New York. The next game, hey, we're somewhere in Michigan, or then we're down in Florida. We go out to California. So we're a national organization, and I think again Notre Dame would lose more than just its central our national recognition. It would lose a piece of itself, in my mind. And again, Notre Dame actually loses money by not joining a conference. Everybody, we made the determination that, hey, we were willing to lose money to maintain the integrity of what makes Notre Dame Notre Dame. So, the USC rivalry, the Navy rivalry, we're able to play those games and keep those traditions alive because we're willing to sacrifice a couple of dollars to maintain. I look now, and you look at teams now, and how many teams have lost those traditional battles? I mean, I just look at Texas, and Texas and Texas A&M, they don't play anymore because Texas A&M is in the SEC. So what would we stand to lose versus what we gain by joining the conference? That has to be first and foremost.
So, Reggie, talk about the book. I mean, you've been busy these last couple of years here. I mean, first of all, you become executive director of Holt's Heroes Foundation. which has to be a great, great big honor for you. Then you decide you want to be an author. I don't know how that got into there, but what was first of all, talk about the foundation, what it means to you to be part of it, and then talk about the book and what was the purpose, what was your meaning for writing the book?
Well, in terms of Hostess Heroes Foundation, the focus has been, being there for our former athletes. And, I did a lot with it as a part of Notre Dame athletics. I saw a lot of guys struggling, in post-career. And that was something that really impacted me. And, all the things that we were able to do through Notre Dame for our former student athletes in terms of being able to impact them and the lives of their families, of individuals that have been struggling, whether it's mentally, physically, financially, to be there, be a support, and to provide support for the communities where our guys live. So that's, Hostess Heroes is about supporting the mission and the legacy of Coach Holtz, which, he always talk about being a force for good, doing things the right way and showing people you care. You do that by, being a support system. And so that's what I said, been my focus is to how can we keep Notre Dame, how can we keep the guys healthy? How can we, be there to support their families, provide scholarships for needy young men and women in our communities, and to really be a community, undergirding the community around the country, because we have so many guys that have, the Tim Browns, the Rockets, the Chris Zoriches, the Jerome Bettises, having those individuals, the Rick Myers, that can go out and be a support and a foundation for a better world and a better opportunity for young people that didn't necessarily have that opportunity. So that's, like I said, Hostess Heroes is about supporting our former athletes, but also supporting their families and their communities. And with the book, if not for John Heisler, there's no way I would have written the book. Heis has been around Notre Dame for 40 years as sports information director. And this guy, he bled blue and gold, and he knew all the stories that I told in the book. And so he had context. So, and when you have someone working with you, and that was his forte, is right. He's written a number of books about Notre Dame. It was my opportunity during a pandemic to share with, hopefully, just the average Notre Dame fan, just some of the ins and outs of what makes Notre Dame special. And a lot of that are the stories of the men and women that played, for me, the guys that played football, and, the families, and it stretches back and goes forward. So it was a compilation of my experiences as a player, as an alum, and also as an employee. I've been around to see a lot of the different opportunities that Notre Dame has afforded, to see the growth of the university and the growth of the athletic department, to see, hey, what it was like to be there. So I have a great relationship with Johnny Lujak and, his grandkids, and what makes it, him special is I always remember Johnny Lujak because of his kids. Rocky Blyer, his connection with the armed forces, being a Vietnam vet. Yep. Alan Page, his intellect as a state Supreme Court justice. And then the younger guys that I've gotten to know, like Manti Te'o and, his dad. And Notre Dame is about family. And the book really talks about family and how family continues to support one another, and it goes backwards and forward. So we reach back in time to bring some stories of some of the former guys, like the Dave Caspers and the Joe Montanas, of their time at Notre Dame, and then it goes forward. So it's a book about family, but about stories of things that actually happened at Notre Dame, those commonalities that we had as players, but also we're always fans. When you leave Notre Dame, you still bleed blue and gold, and you kind of, you're up and down, live and die on Notre Dame football if you're someone that played for the Irish.
Reggie, what's the name of the book, and where can people get it?
It's on Amazon.com, or you can go to the Notre Dame bookstore, bookstores within your area. And it's called If These Walls Could Talk, stories from the Notre Dame sideline, locker room, and press box. And I've had the pleasure of being in all those different places.
Now, I have to ask you, we are talking to Reggie Brooks, by the way, former All-American Notre Dame running back and NFL running back. There's two plays people talk about, as you know, two key plays, and you hear this all the time. But, it sounds like the first one sounds like a fairy tale. I think it's called the unconscious touchdown fairy tale, where you run 20-yard touchdown run against Michigan. Listen to this, Zach. Broke 6 tackles, the last one which knocked him unconscious, but by some miracle, he falls, after being unconscious, falls into the end zone face down. I got to ask you about that because I love reading about that, but when did you finally realize that you scored a touchdown?
I didn't. I mean, all I remember is the Jim Russ, who was the trainer at the time, coming out and, with the smelling sauce. And I got up and, I'm walking over the sideline thinking like, I have no idea what happened. And then even after the game, I'm being asked in the post-game press conference about the run. No clue. Half that game was a complete blur and blank to me. So I was like in the post-game press conference, like I had no idea what they were talking about. I was clueless.
Now, the second one, the amazing thing about the snowball game was you guys go for 2, but I think the most, and you'll understand this because it was you, but if I remember correctly, you might have, if I remember correctly, maybe caught one pass the whole year from the running back position. I got to ask you, when that ball was thrown to you, was it by Rick Meyer, when it was thrown to you, how big did that football look when it was coming to you?
It was not so much how big it looked. It just was how slow it was coming towards me. And, Rick has a pretty nice, good, strong arm.
Yeah.
And it seemed like that ball was in the air forever. And it's just like everything was just went into slow motion. And I felt it on the fingertips. And honestly, I was not supposed to be in the progression at all. So the fact that the ball came to me, you knew something bad had happened, that Rick had to come and wind up throwing the ball. Basically he was under duress and just threw it up for grabs and laid a perfect ball out there to where only I could get it.
Well, it was a diving catch, if I remember correctly.
Yes. It was. If I didn't catch that ball, nobody else would. I mean, he put it in the perfect location, and it just. And this goes back to what Coach Oates was always instilled in us, the importance of when your time comes, stepping up and making the play. You don't have to do it. We're not asking you to do anything great. Just be there and be ready to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you. And that's what that was. It was an opportunity that was presented and taking advantage of it. And it just so happens it was a play that, kind of went down in Notre Dame lore because that was the last game we, at that time, Penn State was just about to go to the Big Ten. So that was the last time we would play them because, again, conference realignment, even back then.
All right, last question before I let you run, Reg. I know you're going to pick up your daughter and everything. Notre Dame, 7-1 on the season. They only have one blemish the whole year. They finish up with Navy, Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Stanford. I mean, looks pretty promising that the Notre Dame could run out this schedule and only have one loss by the end of the season.
Yes, I can see us going 11-1. But to be honest with you, I'd be hard pressed to see us making the playoffs just because of our lack of strength of schedule. I mean, coming into this season, you thought, USC, North Carolina, Cincinnati, you had some really Virginia Tech, you had some games that coming into the season that was supposed to be ranked versus ranked team, Wisconsin, and to see those teams are struggling now. We can win out, but it'll be hard pressed for us to make our way into to the championship, kind of back to the fact that we're not in the conference, that's not going to play in our favor because we won't have a conference championship to play.
Reg, I said last question. I'm sorry I lied. I have one more. Because of what you see Notre Dame going through, and we were talking about the first college football playoff poll that came out earlier this evening, is this a good example if they do win out Notre Dame, that 11-1, is this a good example of why they should extend the playoffs to maybe 8 teams rather than 4 teams?
Well, I would say it's more about the situation with, because Notre Dame has the brand. And again, in the college football playoff understands, that if Notre Dame is in the mix, that's good for business. The team that I think is kind of getting shafted is the team that beat Notre Dame, and that's Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And they basically said a non-Power 5 school will not make the playoffs. I mean, some really interesting things would have to happen, and I struggle with that because again, the game is supposed to be about how do you play on the field and the competition, and again, Cincinnati has a win over a top 10 team, which is Notre Dame, and for them to, I thought they'd at least be 5. I was thinking. And they're undefeated. They played well. And it also shows there's a huge bias as it relates to the SEC.
All right, my friend. Well, listen, Reggie, we want to thank you very, very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on College Football Tuesday. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Appreciate it. Take it easy.
All right, and good luck to Notre Dame the rest of the way.
Thank you.
All right, stay safe. All right, that was Reggie Brooks. Let's go ahead, Zach. We're going to take a quick 15-second station break. When we come back, we're going to run through some of the scores. I'm going to kind of minimize it to certain games. Then we're going to go over next week's game. We'll be able to wrap that up within 30 minutes. We'll do a fast version, but a quality version. Don't worry, guys, of it. So let's take a quick station break to allow our stations to identify themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Sports. I'm Larry Frank along with Zach Mckinnell. And Zach, what a great weekend. I went over one game while you were fooling around with the Wi-Fi over there. But I'm going to go ahead. We also talked about Gary Patterson stepping down, but we're not going to hit on that now for the sake of time. But for the big game, I call it the Kenneth Walker show. Michigan State versus Michigan. Michigan State, I think, was down like 30-14 in this game. And when you look at, once again, you and I always talk about, there's a game where you look at statistics or box scores and you say, maybe the other team won. But this was a game where Michigan State continued to go with the run, and Kenneth Walker kept delivering 5 touchdowns on the day. It was just one of those games that I'm just looking if I had any important notes. But statistically, Michigan won the game. But at the end of the day, I was just amazed watching Kenneth Walker. And if anybody out there tells me that this young man doesn't need to be in consideration or shouldn't be in consideration for at least for the Heisman voting, they're crazy. This guy was incredible with 197 yards, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, if that wasn't a Heisman performance, then I need to see what a Heisman performance is for a running back. I mean, just personally, that was one of the most impressive performances I've seen by a running back in a big game like that in a long time. Also, you got to credit Michigan State for sticking with the game plan. It's so easy when you're down 16 points to abandon the run game, start trying to air it out. They stayed patient, stayed to stuck to what they do best, running the ball. And the defense made some key plays. But this for me has to go down as what was Jim Harbaugh thinking? You put a true freshman in crunch time with the chance to win the game, and he fumbles his first snap and pretty much leads to Michigan State's scoring drive. So for me, I just I just have so many questions about what Jim Harbaugh was doing. And even though Peyton Thorne didn't play well at quarterback, he made the throws he had to. That 4th and 4 pass where he threw the fade to the pylon was just spot on. It was one of the most beautiful passes of the weekend. So for me, you got to give Mel Tucker and Michigan State credit. They won the game playing how they wanted to. They showed they can overcome adversity. This was such an impressive win for the Spartans this weekend.
Well, another impressive win, and we talked about this on Thursday night, was your Auburn Tigers. And, when we talked about this game Thursday night, I said two things. I said, Bo Nix, earlier this season, we saw him play well. I think it was the Penn State game we were referencing to. But I thought Bo Nix came in, did what he had to do again. But I said Tank has to show up this game. And what did Tank do? He acted like a tank. He showed up, and what a great, great game. And you talk about a well-balanced offense. Nix, 276 yards and a touchdown. Bixby, 140 yards and a touchdown. Total of 207 yards. Yes, Matt Carroll hurt his foot early in that game. But once again, a great, great performance by the two guys that we say, and I'm sure we'll say again this week when we get to the game that they play, that just played terrific and did everything they had to do to win.
Yeah, for Auburn, Matt Corral's injury was unfortunate. He came back and played, though, but Auburn's defense, I think, deserves a lot of credit. This was the first game in over 19 games where Matt Corral didn't throw a touchdown pass. And then Tank Bixby had a big game. Bo Nix continues to look better and better week in and week out. He didn't make any mistakes. He outplayed the Heisman favorite in Matt Corral this weekend. Shockingly, the O-line held up. The wide receivers stopped dropping passes. Right now, you have to say Auburn's playing like one of the best two-loss teams in the country right now. It was a huge win. And I'm telling you, man, there's not a scarier place in late October, November than going to play in Jordan-Hare against an Auburn team with nothing to lose. That is a scary sight. And they just keep pulling out. This is their second ranked top 20 win in a row over an SEC West opponent. They have another one this week. But Auburn, man, they put it together. They ran a lot of 12 and 13 personnel, just one running back, 2 or 3 tight ends, and it just overwhelmed Ole Miss up front. And the tight ends made plays in the passing game, which really opened up the playbook. Got to give Auburn credit, man. They just keep finding ways to win, and they keep improving week in and week out.
And you got to give, like I think you hit on it, that offensive line credit. Not only did they give Bo Nix some time, but they opened up some beautiful holes for Bigsby to gain 140 yards as well. Here's a shocker. Kentucky goes down, and, just another amazing week in football. Mississippi outscored Kentucky 17-7. I call this the game of will. Who has the more will? Was it Will Levis or Levi's? I haven't pronounced that guy's name right all year. Or was it Will Rogers? And Mississippi State, Will Rogers, 344 yards, a touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns for Mississippi State. Joquan Marks, 2 by Dylan Johnson. And I thought overall, when you look at the balanced game, you look at the rushing touch, basically what I saw in this game with Mississippi State, and if you got to see some of it, they used the pass to set up the run rather than the rush to set up the pass. So what they would do is they get downfield with the pass, and then they just run it in with the guys, 3 rushing touchdowns, and it was a terrific formula, and it worked. And give credit to where credit's due. Again, another team, Mississippi State, shocks number 12 Kentucky.
I don't know what Mike Leach has given these people, but I don't know how he keeps tricking everyone into playing an air raid football with him. Like, Kentucky, you are a running football team, got one of the leading rushers in the SEC. Why are you throwing the ball with Mike Leach?
Yeah,
like that's like getting in a boxing match with Mike Tyson. At least switch it up and like do some like MMA, do something. Like you can't play into their wheelhouse. They did it against Mississippi State. They made A&M do it as well. It's like every week you're looking, all these run heavy teams are airing it out. And it's like, why are you throwing it against Mississippi State? Run the ball, keep the offense on the sideline, and wear down that defense that doesn't have a lot of depth. But you got to give Mike Leach credit, man. They're quietly sitting at 5-3, some big wins on their resume. And so for me, Mississippi State with wins over A&M and Kentucky right now are sitting in a real good spot in the SEC West.
Yeah, and let's also throw into that game for Mississippi, Kentucky, 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions by Levis. So, obviously turning the ball over in the passing game did not help them much at all. Now, this game, you look at this game, we talked about this. This one scared you. You said, watch out for Houston. They may not be ranked, but they're a lot better team than people are giving them credit for. And what do they go in? They go in, they beat SMU, the 19th ranked team, and what a great game. Clayton Tune, 412 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns. 3 of those touchdown passes came to Nathaniel Dell, who had 165 yards receiving. But listen to this stat, 9 of 16 on 3rd down and 489 yards total offense. That's a formula for success. And they ran, what looks like a very, very close game. I thought they had in hand for most of the way.
Yeah, I mean, both offenses are great this year. Like, yes, SMU's offense is one of the best in the country, but it really came down to which defense could make a stop. And that was my whole argument last week is I trusted Houston's defense to make a stop or two more than I did SMU. I mean, they were just so offense heavy. Now, yes, SMU is going to put up points, but Houston stuck to their game plan. Tune played a great game at quarterback, and Houston pulled this one out just because their defense was significantly better than what SMU had, and SMU couldn't get a stop all game. I mean, Houston was able to work up and down the field at will, doing whatever they wanted. And that was the biggest question mark surrounding SMU is when they got to face a good team, could that defense step up? And they were not ready for the moment this weekend.
No. Now we go to the game that we were on. Everyone's talking about Ohio State quietly. And I say quietly because you don't hear a lot of talk out of them this year. Defeated Penn State, which doesn't surprise me, didn't surprise you. Penn State just doesn't have a running game, and they don't have, C.J. Stroud was awesome for Ohio State, 305 yards, a touchdown. How about Trevian Henderson, 152 yards for Ohio State, 1 touchdown, but no rushing game for Penn State. They had 3 turnovers. Clifford was sacked 4 times, threw an interception. This is an Ohio State team that quietly, week to week, goes out there and just keeps winning.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was one. Okay, so I'll start out with the positive for Penn State. For them to play with the emotion and intensity they played with after coming out so flat back-to-back weeks against Iowa and Illinois, I was very impressed with how James Franklin, really got that turnaround. He said, listen, I know we didn't play well last week. We're going to come out and give Ohio State everything. And they played really, really, really well this weekend. So I want to give Penn State their credit. They had some chances to win the game. And up until that interception late in the 3rd quarter, they did have a chance to win. But you got to give it, man. Trevian Henderson is a problem at running back for Ohio State. That kid is different. He, on his first 14 carries, he only rushed for I believe it was 30 yards. And on his last 14, he rushed for over 130. So it was just a tale of 2 halves. They were able to establish the run. C.J. Stroud was able to play very, very well. And like you said, the defense was able to make enough plays to win the game. They got the big pick. They had the big boy fumble return, strip sack for a touchdown, which I loved the energy that brought to that team. So for me, I was really impressed with how Ohio State, even when they didn't play well, found a way to win. But let's give Sean Clifford his credit. He had no help from the run game, no help from the offensive line, and still threw for almost 400 yards and had a chance to win this game against a very good Ohio State team. Sean Clifford deserves his praise, but right now you just could tell Ohio State had too much talent. And when you make mistakes like Penn State made with the pick and you give the defense points, it's really hard to win on the road against a top 5 team.
Now, last Thursday, we talked about this next game, and I said this game scares me for San Diego because it seems like on any given day out there, any team can beat any team out there. And Fresno State, which is a good ball club, let's not forget they were ranked earlier in the year, defeats San Diego State. Jake Hanna was what? 306 yards, a touchdown. Jordan Mims, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 turnovers. Once again, you hear that word turnovers by San Diego State, and they just had a hard time, and Fresno State ended up taking care of San Diego.
Yeah, Fresno State's too good. If that defense, so the offense is always fairly good with Jake Haener at Fresno State. They got a solid run game, but if that defense is forcing turnovers and playing fast like they were early in the season against UCLA, UConn, those teams, they are a tough team to beat. And with San Diego State having turnovers, again, Jake Haener having a big game, that is a recipe for disaster when you play Fresno State. So you've got to give them some credit for bouncing back, because Fresno State's been on a losing streak. Yep. They were like 4 or 5-0. They were like 4-0, and now they're like 4-4 right now. So for me, this was a big win for the Bulldogs, and they finally put it back all together, and they finally look like the team that I saw earlier in the season.
Well, a team that doesn't look like we saw earlier in the season is the Miami Hurricanes. And I already got votes for 2022 Heisman Trophy winner, because I'll tell you what, this Tyler Van Dyke, I don't know where he's been, but the last 2 games he's been outstanding. 426 yards, 3 touchdowns. And we expected to hear all about Kelly Pickett this game. And don't get me wrong, Kelly only threw for 519 yards in this game and 3 touchdowns, but he had a lot of pressure on him this game. Had 2 interceptions, had 4 sacks in this game. Was sacked 4 times in this game. And, I always tell people the most dangerous people out there is a team that has nothing to lose and a young quarterback who has everything to prove. And I'll tell you what, this Tyler Van Dyke, unless we're just watching a 2-game career here, is going to be something special. I believe he's a redshirt. Don't quote me, but he might be a freshman.
Yeah, he's a freshman.
I'm correct. Which means he has a couple more years ahead of him. I'll tell you what, it's a promising start for the young kid.
Yeah, he's played lights out, man. Listen, I love De'Aaron King, but man, I don't know how you kept this kid on the bench. This kid is balling. He has so much confidence. He's got the pocket presence. He's making plays, and he's doing it where Miami's racked up a lot of injuries. They have a lot of freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores playing on this team right now due to injuries and certain things like that. So as Manny Diaz, listen, as Manny Diaz was on the hot seat, he's turned this around real quick. The win over NC State was impressive. The win over Pitt was impressive. They were able to force enough turnovers to keep them alive. They have some secondary issues I'm worried about, but when you're having nothing to lose, Miami's dangerous, man. And Van Dyke is the catalyst to this turnaround for Miami. I was so impressed. And for Kenny Pickett, man, the defense didn't give him any help. I know we made his mistakes, but the defense had to play better against this Miami offense that is banged up at every single position. This was a bad loss for Pitt. Not a great look for Kenny Pickett's Heisman hopes, but the good thing is Bryce Young was off. Matt Corral didn't look great either, so I think he's still in it, but Pitt needed this game really bad.
Yeah, and Kenny Pickett, like I said, still had 590 yards, but even more impressive for Van Dyke going up against the potential Heisman candidate is he felt some pressure too in this game, and he handled it well. He was sacked 3 times, but he still came back, still handled the adversity, stood tall. And I'll tell you what, I've never been a huge Miami fan, but it's hard not to like this kid. I mean, there's something special going on in Miami right now.
Yeah, I think right now Manny Diaz is saving his job, and he can reel off a few more wins. I mean, they got some winnable games toward the end of the season. So for me, you definitely can tell that, Miami has a chance here.
Well, let's go ahead. We're not going to take any more station breaks. We're going to go into next week's game. I got 5 or 6 of them. We'll run through them real quickly, and then we'll wrap it up. But a big game for undefeated Demon Deacons. Playing at North Carolina. I believe that's a 12 noon game. Wake Forest 8-0. Carolina now 4-4. Sam Hartman versus Sam Howell, I guess you can call it. Hartman, he went 24-37, 402 yards, 3 touchdowns versus Duke. season, 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. We know about Sam Howell, but I'd say that they need Ty Chandler to open up the offense, and the offensive line needs to show up if North Carolina has a chance in this game, because this is a North Carolina offensive line that has given up 30 sacks already this year on Sam Howell. He's been running for his life. And, you talk about Hartman a lot. I know you like him a lot. And I really like to see what he can do for this North Carolina team.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game. North Carolina is actually the favorite. So I've been keeping track. This is 3 straight weeks that we've had a top 10 underdog. 3 straight weeks. And I don't know who's setting the lines. I don't know who's ranking the teams. Something's off here. But North Carolina's a 2.5-point favorite right now. But for me, the QB battle is going to be so fun to watch.
Yes.
Hartman versus Howell. Man, inject that straight into my veins every weekend. That is going to be electric, especially with 2 defenses that are not very good. So I'm expecting this game to be one of the highest scoring games of the weekend. So I'm not going to give you a winner right now because I'm previewing this, but I'm leaning toward Wake Forest because of this. The offensive line, like you said, for UNC has been atrocious. And if you don't protect Sam Howell, you can speed him up into the pocket. That's how you win the game. And then also, you mentioned Todd Chandler. If you can slow down the run game and make Howell just air it out and air it out and air it out, he's going to make some mistakes. You saw Notre Dame able to outscore next weekend. This is going to be a test for Wake Forest for me. If they can pass this test, look, North Carolina, they might be 4-4. There's some real talent on that team. This is a big test for Wake Forest, and so I want to see if Wake Forest's defense can rebound from giving up 56 points to Army just a few weeks ago. This is going to be a huge test, but right now, I would lean the Demon Deacons right now in Chapel Hill this weekend.
Well, another big game this weekend, your Auburn Tigers 6-2. They're ranked 12th versus number 13, Texas A&M. And I'll tell you what, you got to make A&M one-dimensional, because I will tell you right now, Zach Calzada is not going to win this game by himself for Texas A&M. And I'll tell you what, if I'm a coach of a team, or I'm telling you what Auburn has to do, I'm saying take a blueprint from the last game you played versus Mississippi and go ahead and implement it here and execute it, and you'll get the same result. Bigsby got to run like he did last game. I know at the beginning of the year you weren't sold on Bo Nix, but every single game I watch him play more and more, I like him more and more, and he's proven now that in the big games he can hold his own, and this is a great test for him again. And this is a really big game for Auburn. They can win. They're already bowl eligible, but if they can win, they're just going to keep getting a better bowl by the end of the year.
Yeah, listen, I mean, and I don't want to look too far ahead. They win this game, and they win out to the Iron Bowl. If they beat Alabama in Jordan-Hare, which Nick Saban hasn't won there since 2015 and has never beaten an Auburn team with 9 or more wins. I don't know if you knew that. Nick Saban is 0 and I forgot however many against 9-win Auburn teams. So that's going to be in Jordan-Hare too, which he hasn't won since 2015. So for me, if Auburn wins this game, they have a chance to go to the SEC title. If I would have told you that, after the Penn State game on this show, you'd have been like, okay, you're being a little bit of a homer now, Zach. You're not being unbiased. You're not supposed to be riding Auburn. They have a chance to go to the SEC championship with a win this weekend. But for me, the blueprint is simple. Tank Bigsby running the ball, Bo Nix with the intermediate passes. That's been a big part of this, 13 and 12 personnel offense they've been running. Intermediate routes with the wide receivers, make it easy for them to catch, kind of solve those drop issues. Trust the tight ends to block, go make those handful of plays you need. Bo Nix is going to be efficient, avoid turnovers. Bo Nix is tied for the least amount of interceptions in the SEC with Matt Corral right now.
And what else Auburn can do? And you kind of mentioned it, but they could knock Alabama out of the playoff picture. And When was the last time we seen both Alabama and Clemson not in the playoffs?
2014? No,
I know it's been a while.
Oh, man.
But it would be beautiful, wouldn't it?
I don't think that's ever happened because 2014, Bama was in it and they lost to Ohio State in the first round. Then 2015, they won. 16 was Clemson. 17 was Bama. So I don't think it's ever happened. So it'll be
It
the
would be
first time ever.
beautiful, man.
Um,
It would be
for me,
beautiful.
but for me, I would say this weekend, the Auburn front seven has played so well over these past 3
Yeah.
weeks. Colby Wooden's been a factor. Owen Papo's back healthy. That's a 5-star All-American linebacker right there. So Kobe McLean, one of the leading tacklers in the SEC. I think they're going to speed Calzada up. They learned from Bama's mistake. If you let Calzada get comfortable, he can pick you apart now. He was the key to beating Alabama a few weeks back. I think they're going to get after Calzada. They're going to slow down the running attack, and I think Auburn squeaks this one out in College Station.
All right, now my 3 games to watch this week. First of all, upset 1. Tennessee at Kentucky. I'm taking Tennessee in this game. Hendon Hooker, 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for Tennessee, but they got to stop Charlie Rodriguez Jr. That's going to be a key in this game. Lexus, 14 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. The key is put pressure on Levis, and you know what? He throws interceptions, but Kentucky had an emotional letdown losing next week. I don't know if they're ready to bounce back yet. Watch out for Tennessee. Been playing some good football of late. 4-4, respectable in the SEC. I'm just saying it might be, one of those long shots, but look out for Tennessee this weekend versus Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting game because the number one thing that hurts Kentucky is if they get to a shootout, I don't know if they have the offense to get into one of those high-scoring games, and that's what Tennessee's going to bring. They played Ole Miss really close 2 weeks ago, before the fiasco that was the throwing everything on the field, and that just went to everything. But for me, it's real tough to have to go play in Kroger Field. Lexington, Kentucky, they're going to have all the blue. That stadium's going to be rocking at 6 p.m. Central.
Yeah.
I think the only reason I would lean Kentucky right now is because the culture that Mark Stoops has built is real. He absolutely knows exactly how to get this team to respond. He's done it year after year. I think Kentucky was overlooking Mississippi State. I don't think they make the same mistake twice. So I would lean Kentucky this weekend over Tennessee.
All right, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. All right, there we go. Let me get rid of this. Okay. Another game, Penn State, Maryland. I don't know. Something about Maryland. They play everybody tough, it seems like. Another dark horse for me is this Maryland team possibly going in and upsetting Penn State out of the top 25.
Man, this one's going to be so tough for me because the offense for Maryland is so explosive. And for me, I just don't trust Penn State's offense. The only holdup I would say is that Penn State's defense is fairly good, and Maryland really struggled with the one good defense they saw against Ohio State and Iowa. They really got blown out in both of those games. So this is going to be, I would say, a gut check for Penn State. How do you respond to multiple losses in a row and everyone questioning if your head coach is going to leave you and players are, the morale is low? Can you respond? For me, this is a 50-50 game, but right now, man, I would lean Penn State because I would just have a tough time thinking about Penn State losing 4 in a row.
And if I'm right, I'm going on top of my head without notes on this, but isn't this where Little T plays for Maryland, Tagovailoa?
Yeah. Tua's little brother. It's like Talia.
Yeah, I never can pronounce the name, but I know he had 419 yards versus Indiana, which Indiana is not a great team this year. At the beginning of the year, they were expected to do a lot. So, he does put up some yards. It should be an interesting game. But like you said, let's see how Penn State, we talk about handling adversity, and here is one that we'll find out. Now, the last game that I picked, and I really think Arkansas is going to whoop up on Mississippi. Arkansas finally had their week off. This was a tired team. Not only was it a tired team, they were all tired. I understand that. But look at the schedule they played in the front half of the season. Just an incredible, schedule they had. Yes, they're 5-3, but they're much better than that 5-3 record indicates. It's in Arkansas. It's in Fayetteville. I just don't know. I think Arkansas, I think Jefferson comes out and, the dual presence he has with, what's that? Is it Burks?
Burks, yeah, Trevian Burks.
Right, Burks, who has 7 touchdowns this year. I think Arkansas handles Mississippi State no problem this week.
I'll make it simple for you. I got Arkansas big in this one. I think they needed a week to get healthy. They've lost to some really good teams, and now Mississippi State's the one with the target on their back. They're the favorite. They're the ranked team. So how do they respond now with the target on their back rather than the target on their opponent's back? So that's going to be the biggest thing. I still think Arkansas is a good team. I have Arkansas convincingly this weekend over Mississippi State.
We got about 2 minutes left before we wrap it up. Any other games that of major interest to you this week?
Yeah, okay. So this one's going to be funny. Michigan State, Purdue. On the road at Purdue, one of the winningest programs against top 5 programs in the country. They got like 15 top 5 upsets. Michigan State's coming off an emotional comeback win. Could they be sleeping on Purdue, who's already knocked off a top 2 team? Michigan State's only a 3-point favorite as the number 3 team in the country. Purdue had a big win last week. So for me, Purdue, Michigan State smells like upset alert city right now. And then another top 5 team. Oregon has to go face their division rival, Washington. Now, it's been a tough year for Jimmy Lake and the Huskies, but as you know, man, one of those rivalry games, anything can happen any weekend. Oregon hasn't been particularly, I would say, they haven't been dominant. They keep their opponents around. If you keep your rival around, bad things could happen. So I would say Oregon traveling to Washington would be my other upset of the weekend game to watch.
I like your pick there. I really do. Plus, I want Oregon to get out of that top 4. But the Purdue, I just don't know if they can handle Kenneth Walker and stop him. I just don't know. I mean, that's going to be the key in that game to contain that running game of Michigan State. And, as they do that, whichever way they go will dictate which way that game goes.
So, 1,000%.
Yeah. All right, my friend. What a fun full pack show. Reggie Brooks, great, wasn't he? Having Reggie Brooks on. Just a great interview as always. On behalf of myself and Zach, want to thank everyone on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube Live, Tobacco Sports Radio, and the people from Blue Bloods, all for tuning in tonight, allowing us the opportunity to be on their stations. And both myself and Zach will be back next week at the same time, same place, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Good night, folks.